Welcome to Mathematics with Mr. Win. In today's lesson, we are going to learn about using inverse operations. Now, in this lesson, I'm going to be asking you a few questions. So at any point, if you need some time to think, pause the video, have a think about it, and then play the video again to check if your answer is correct. So let's get started. What does it mean by inverse operations? So inverse operations mean doing the opposite. Or in simple terms, inverse operations just stands for doing the opposite. So we can even call that as opposite operations, but the mathematical terminology we prefer to use is called inverse operations. So let's have a look at some examples. So for example, if I have addition, so what's going to be inverse of addition? So the inverse of addition will be subtraction. Similarly, if we take multiplication, what's going to be my inverse? My inverse is going to be divide. If I start with subtraction, my inverse is going to be add. And say we start with divide, the inverse is going to be multiply. So that's what inverse operation stands for, the opposites. So add and subtract are opposite to each other, multiply and divide are opposite of each other. Now we're going to learn about a couple more terminologies before we get started with some examples. So input and output number in a flowchart. So we're going to look at some flowcharts today. So what's an input number? The first number in the flowchart is what we're going to call as the input number, and the last number in the flowchart is what we're going to call as the output number. So the first number is called the input number, the last number is called the output number. So let's start with our first example. So they want us to complete the flowchart to find the output number. So as I can see, the first number in my flowchart is 8. So what is 8 then? 8 becomes our input number. So what's the first thing they want us to do? They want us to multiply it by 2. So what do we have? 8 times 2 gives us 16, which is going to be the second number in our flowchart. What are we going to do with 16? We are going to add a 4 to it. So 16 plus 4 gives us 20. What are we going to do with 20? We are going to divide 20 by 5. So 20 divided by 5 gives us 4. And one final step in our flowchart, we're going to subtract 3 from 4. So 4 take away 3 gives us 1. So we have now completed this flowchart. So if you look at this flowchart here, that is my input number. So 8 is my input number and 1 is my output number. That's as simple as it is. Now, in our second example, what do we notice here? We notice that they want us to complete the flowchart to find the input number. So what we have in this flowchart is they've given us the last number, which is our output number, and they want us to go backwards to work out an input number. Now this is where the inverse operations comes into play. So if we need to go backwards, we need to do the opposite. So let's start with the 4. So what's happening before 4? They have divided it by 7. So what is opposite to dividing by 7? The opposite of dividing by 7 is going to be multiplying by 7. So what are we going to do now? We're starting with our output number 4 and we're multiplying it by 7. So 4 times 7 is going to give me 28. Now let's have a look at 28. So they have now multiplied by 2 in the forward direction. So going backwards, what's opposite to multiply by 2? We are going to divide by 2. So 28 divided by 2, what's that going to give us? 28 divided by 2 is equal to 14. So we have one last step. So the forward action is add 5. So what's going to be the backward action? That's going to be take away 5. The opposite of adding 5 is going to be take away 5. So 14 take away 5. What's that going to give us? That's going to give us a 9. So what we have now done is we've gone backwards to work out our input number. So in this case, 4 was our output number. And we've worked out that 9 is our input number. So what do we call working backwards is? The terminology we're going to use for working backwards is called backtracking. Now, while using backtracking, we have to use inverse operations. Just keep that in mind. So when we're doing backtracking or working backwards, we have to use our inverse operations. A short and a sweet lesson for today. Have a lovely day, students.